So let's get started with the Access assignment for IFSM 201 this term. Rather than giving you a database to begin working with, since we have students who are working with various applications, the base data is actually found here in an Excel spreadsheet, which is uploaded in the classroom. This 201 equipment spreadsheet, you can see, contains a page about systems, and those systems include fields like serial number and system unit and price and processor and so on and so forth. We've got quite a bit of information here. It's got a page about assignments, which employee has been assigned which systems, and given a particular hand receipt. So that's the base data that you're being given to start with, so you don't have to type it all out. I'm going to go ahead and close that equipment table for now. And we'll start by opening up. I'm going to use Microsoft Access, my second favorite Microsoft program. I'm opening up Microsoft Office and starting Microsoft Access. We're going to start from scratch with a blank database, and I'm going to call it 201 Technology. And in fact, I'm not going to use any spaces, and here we go. So this is just creating a basic empty database. It doesn't have any tables, queries, forms, or reports in it yet. By the time we're done, you'll be able to see examples of all of those in the video, and then you're going to have the joy of creating them yourself. Now, Access opens up a blank table, but I don't want to start with a blank table. I'm going to go ahead and close it out. The table that I want to create first is going to keep track of my employees, and specifically I'm hoping to get the first name, last name, which department they work for, kind of an office phone extension, and an email address for each employee. So I'm going to create my table in Design View. Now, Design View takes you behind the scenes where you get to choose what fields you're going to use, what data types those fields are, and then any specific properties about each field, like format and so on and so forth. So I brainstormed all of this out in advance. You know that that's the hard part. The first field that I want is about the employee's ID number. Now, this is instead of a Social Security number, and it's going to be a data type text. In fact, anything that you're not going to do math with is probably a data type text. And this is the unique identifier given to each employee. And that's what it looks like. All right. The next field that I'm going to work with is the first name, and it's also a data type text. And last name, I think that's reasonably obvious what that is. What department each employee works for, and because DEPT might not be obvious to everybody, I'm going to go ahead and put out that that's the employee's department. Then, let's see. We want the office extension. And even though phone extensions look like digits, we know for a fact that we're not going to do math with those, so we're going to go ahead and leave that as the 4-digit phone extension, but it's a data type text. And then finally, last but not least, the email address of the employee, and again, I'm going to leave that as a data type text, and I'm looking for the company email as opposed to a personal email address. So I've put in the different fields behind the scenes here. I've chosen data types for them. You know that it's kind of nice for, it's not nice, in fact it's a requirement for each record in your table to have some sort of unique identifier that prevents us from accidentally entering the same record twice with disagreeing information. So to preserve data integrity, in other words, I need to designate one of these fields as a primary key. And the only one that will serve, the employee ID number, which we're going to say is unique to each employee. So I'm going to designate employee ID as the primary key, and then I'm going to switch from Design View, which is where I'm designing things behind the scenes here, to Data Sheet View, which is the surface of the table and holds all of the data. You must first save the table. Yes, I'm willing to save the table now, and I'm going to call this the table employee, and that's what it looks like. Now, we're currently sitting on the surface of the table in Datasheet View, and I'm going to put in information regarding my employees. In fact, I'd like you to put in 5 different employees. The only thing that's important is that the employee ID must be in the format EMP01. That's my first employee. And in fact, you're the first employee. Go ahead and put in your name. And I'm going to work for the IT department and office extension. Why not? And no, I should go ahead and put in my real office extension, email, and I'm going to use the silly company email address, and away we go. Now, your next employee must be EMP02, and then you can go ahead and hire whoever you want. I'm hiring my cat first, and my cat probably works for marketing. He probably works for mousing, but there you go, 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's go ahead and put in the email address for my cat and so on and so forth. Now, you don't need to watch me type in all of the employee names, so I'm going to pause the video for just a second, and when I come back, we should have the data inside. So I've typed in all of my data. I'd like you to notice that as the little pencil over here is showing next to a record, it's currently in the process of being edited. It's locked for other employees to be able to use. The minute I hit enter, the data is saved. I can close this. It doesn't ask me to save, but the data itself is still in there. Okay. Now, the only thing that's not permitted, you cannot add another employee with the same employee ID number. If you try this, it's going to throw a fit and tell you that you're duplicating primary keys. That's okay. We don't need 2 employees with the same employee ID number. So here we are. We've got our 5 different employees. I can expand this so that I can see it, but we're not going to really work in the table view anyway. As you know, later we're going to use forms to edit and add and manipulate data, and queries to ask questions, and reports to view the data itself. So the tables hold all of the data, but you don't really use them once they're built and nice and solid. And I should go ahead and fix, I can see a typing error there. Anything else specific? It's being edited. It's saved. All right, so I'm going to close it. When it asks me about saving changes now, it's talking about the fact that I made this email field wider. You don't have to. The data itself, including my edit, is saved. My table employees is done. So we've created a table. We've set the data types. We've set a primary key. We've populated the table with the data for 5 employees. Note, please, once again, EMP01, EMP02, no spaces. That's important because later we're going to relate the tables, and the tables themselves must have data that matches. Otherwise, the relationships won't work. So the last thing that I want to do here in this first video for the project, I want to go ahead and create a query in Design View, and you know that queries ask questions. Now, my table about employees, let me go ahead and add that table in there. My table about employees contains the employee's ID, their first name, last name, department, office extension, and email. The query, on the other hand, is not going to give me all of that data. I don't need to show the employee's ID number. I do want the first name and last name. I'm double-clicking to add the fields. You could also grab and drag to drop off the fields. I'm going to show the department, and I want to show the email, but not the phone number. That's not necessary. And if I look at the surface of this query, here again we're in Design View telling it what we want to see, which fields from which tables, whether they should show, whether they should be sorted or anything. I'm going to go to the surface view, and again I can see the information here on the surface. I'm going to go back to Design View. Specifically, though, I don't need to see all of the employees right now. I'd only like to see the employees from the department about sales. So I'm going to find the field that talks about department, and I'm not interested in changing the field or the table. I'm not interested in sorting. I'm going to come down here instead, and under criteria, I'm going to type in the word sales. Now, it must match the actual surface. If I just type in sale, it won't work. But if I type in sales, and then we look at the surface, Now we have only our sales department employees. And I'm going to save this as QRY sales and tell it OK. Now I can close this. If I were to add a new employee, let me go ahead and put in employee number 6, and we'll go ahead and have Michael Mouse, related to Mickey, and I'm going to also put him in the sales department, and there's his office extension. There we go. So we've got all of that information in there. I'm going to close this particular table. Now, the reason we designed a query is that it asks a question which is commonly asked. The next person who wants to know who are our sales employees doesn't have to recreate the query. All they have to do is double click. And it brings up all of the sales employees, including anybody who's been added since the query was originally designed. So we've created one table, one very simple query. That's page 1 of the Access assignment. I'm going to pause for now and come back in a minute.